Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Dancing Oracle with Najia. I'm a psychic medium and I'm interested in ancient civilizations. We have an incredible author who also channels as well, and he is Tom.T.MOORE. Some of you had seen him on a couple episodes last month, so I will put those in the link so you can find them. And I'm so excited. We are starting our first episode on Atlantis. And Tom.T.MOORE is an award-winning author and speaker. His books include The Gentle Way and Self-Help Guide for Those Who Believe in Angels. And we talked a bit about that. And the book series First Contact, Conversations with an ET. And the book that I have today, Atlantis and Lemuria, The Lost Continents Revealed, as well as his predictions, part one and two, Gaia. And I'll have all the links for everybody to find him and to find his incredible website and extensive newsletter. Tom, thank you so much for coming back.
Well, thank you for
Oh,
having me.
oh my God, I'm so
Hel-
happy to
Hello,
hear.
everybody out there.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, from all over the world. We are talking about Mother Earth. So tell us, first off, before we start in on the material, what you've learned, some people are new to you who've never tuned in before.
Mhm.
How do you find this information?
It's real simple. And this is something that's on my soul contract to encourage everyone to do. And in fact, I've been told by Creator that in the future, every single person on earth will communicate with Creator during their meditations because we all have the pineal gland in the back of our heads. And scientists so far only know that it produces melatonin. But the other thing that it does, the most major thing, is it acts as an antenna for every single kind of telepathic thought, image, you name it. And I just learned over a period of time that I could do a breathing exercise, put myself into a light, uh, meditative state, and then say, I want to speak to uh, my guardian angel, THEO, or I want to speak to Gaia, soul of the earth, or I wish to speak um, to Creator. And I use Creator because uh, once you learn more about Creator, you, I think, using the word God is it just doesn't do enough. There,
Yeah.
this great being is so powerful and all that I think you should consider saying creator. So anyway, that's it's as I say, everyone can do this, uh, but it just takes what what my guardian angel Theo says is practice, practice, practice.
Mhm.
I asked him so many times about that as I was trying to get better doing this, and he had always say practice, practice, practice. So
Yeah,
that's
like anything. We all love to sing, but it takes practice to be good.
yeah, and it's not, and there will be people, after me that will be able to do this even better because one of the things that's happening because we're in the fifth dimension at 5.0, as we go along, uh, we will raise our vibrational levels and it'll be easier and easier to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can feel that dimensional shift. It's been going on for a while. And it is, once you raise your vibration, you can feel that.
Yeah.
Uh, and you'll know it. It won't, I invite those who are not used to this material to please just listen with an open mind.
Yes.
There's so
Oh,
many treasures we're going to hear in the show today. So yes, tell us
okay. First
about
thing,
Atlantis.
yeah, the first thing I'd like to mention is when I started asking about Atlantis and then Lemuria, I I sort of asked, about why was I getting this material, and I was told that I'd had about 180 lives on Atlantis or during Atlantean times, and about 65 for Lemuria. And I said, well, uh, why so few for Lemuria? And I was told um, that Lemuria for thousands of years, or in the continent of Mu, we know them as Lemurians, but it's
Mhm.
the continent of Mu, that it was a very, very peaceful place.
Yeah.
And so that's much more peaceful than um, than Atlanta was. And so therefore, I didn't need as many lives on uh, Lemuria during Lemurian times as I did for Atlantis. So with that, let's start talking about Atlantis because I had a lot of lives there, and I
Yeah.
was told I have had more lives on both Atlantis and Lemuria than any other person on Earth living at this time. So.
Mm.
Um, Regarding Atlantis, um, and in my book, Atlantis and Lemuria, I I have um, uh, uh, maps, and they're not quite accurate. When I was trying to get the artist for my publisher, um, he kept trying, but he wasn't quite accurate from what I was receiving. But we were on a deadline, so I finally gave up. And the northern continent of Atlantis looks a little higher than it actually was. It it touched like the 40, I think it was the 42nd parallel, but it didn't go beyond that. That's like the bottom of what today is Newfoundland or Newfoundland, depending on where you're from, how you pronounce that. And so so it was a parallel. It was in the shape of a parallelogram, and
Hmm.
it was in between the continents of Europe and Africa, which at that time was known as uh, the land of Oz, which was quite interesting how that name lasted all these thousands of
Did
years.
you, did you say the land of Oz? It was,
Oz, yeah, that
oh,
was his name at that time. So, and then on the other side, it came within about 100 miles of the coast of North America, and but it had a sort of a tail that extended down. Um, oh gosh, it extended down as far as the Bahamas. So
mm,
that's where it was located as a parallelogram, um, and uh, so you get the idea. Now, Atlantis, the continent of Atlantis, sat on top of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, I think, or ridge, pardon me,
mm,
Mid-Atlantic Ridge. And that meant that it was on top of all these volcanoes that were formed from uh, from the continents moving against each other, and there were all these volcanoes lining up all along the mid-Atlantic ridge. And lo and behold, about 30,000 years ago, they all exploded at one time and basically destroyed the most of the continent of Atlantis.
yeah,
So getting up to that time, let's kind of back up a little bit.
yeah,
And so Atlantis, um, uh, both Atlantis and Lemuria were both formed for humans about 60,000 years ago. Okay. And so, needless to say, that was, uh, a long time for them to develop. So they slowly but surely developed and had millions of people living on this continent that was about 10% larger than the continent of Australia is today. So
Now, I was thinking as I'm looking at the map, it looks larger than the United States or it looks larger than the top half of Africa. Would you say that would be correct?
again, if you look at what um, the what the map would be for Australia today, the landmass itself, look at Australia way off in the middle of the Pacific.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
it sort of looks smaller than than it is, and so Atlantis, because of the continent sitting in between the two, were uh, it made them look larger, and but
Okay.
it's about that size.
Yeah, because maps are kind of deceptive until you go on a globe. It's
Yeah,
hard, 3D, it's hard to
yeah.
tell. So,
So so anyway, both continents were settled 60,000 years ago with Homo sapiens. Up until that time, um, the as part of what's called the Earth experiment, the ETs had been given the task by Creator of creating a human being that would be able to last um, with all the rigors of living uh, with four negative energies, because the Creator wanted to see if four negative energies could be worked with, where our universe and the trillions of other universes had all been um, had all been created in the 10 positive energies. So Creator set up this one uh, uh, section of the universe just around our solar system, and and that it was created with these four negative energies.
mm,
So he gave the task to the ETs to find a being that could work and flourish inside these four negative energies, which our scientists will supposedly not discover for quite a number of years. Um, so uh, these ETs uh, knew how to create bodies, but they just did not have the practical experience of doing so. So they tried all sorts of things. I mean, three arms and, you know, uh, different kinds of hands, different kinds of feet. Um, they they were the ones that created what the Atlanteans would later call the things, and these were uh, uh, were humans that we actually ensouled too, and but they had longer lives, sometimes up to 300. So they would be uh, miserably treated by the Atlanteans, and this went on until finally the Atlanteans uh, gained the medical knowledge of how to correct all these deformities that these human things had. So
so
that
why were they miserably treated by the Atlanteans? Like,
they were treated as slaves
whoa.
just to do menial work and whatever, and probably
Mm,
whipped or whatever. So not a very good time for the Atlanteans.
no.
Yeah. So uh, both Lemuria and Atlantis were given free energy. Now the free energy for the Atlanteans came in crystal power. So the ETs gave them crystal power. And basically they had these giant crystals that were about 20 or 25 feet tall called posers. And why they called them that, who knows? And and uh, they would act like a radio, if you can imagine a radio tower uh, that would broadcast, but as the curvature of the earth came, they would need to have another poser, and then another poser, 20 or 50 miles or so later in order to power. It powered all their cars, which never went above 60 or 65 miles an hour, all their trucks, all their homes and businesses, and buses and trains and trolleys and so on. So they, over a long period of time, keep in mind this was 60,000 years ago that they started populating the continent. Over a long period of time, they got very, very sophisticated. Even today, our medical advancements still have not reached the point of what the Atlanteans did. So that's something we still need to work on. And of course, we have the problems with the pharmaceuticals and, you know,
Yeah.
people that want to make money off our bodies. So,
I
um,
I just
so,
went through that, Tom. I thought I just had heart surgery last month and I had horrible problems. It turned out to be one of the drugs I was using that I couldn't function.
mm,
Yeah, so now, hopefully we can gain some of this knowledge.
yeah. So, and we're slowly making progress. I had a heart ablation in 2015. The cardiologist told me that I'd be good for 10 years, and here 2025, I'm having another one. But now they're so advanced that it will take, 1/6 the time to do what they need to do. And in reality, I'm sure there's even better ways to perform the exact same, have the exact same results with not even having to go up through a vein to your heart um, the way they do now to do an ablation. So anyway, um, as they as they went along, they started conquering the whole Mediterranean. Every single
Mm,
place in the Mediterranean was ripe for them to conquer. And uh, but along the way, they tried to conquer Africa. The Atlantean continent was only 30 miles off the land of Oz continent. And so I was told that I had two lives in which I was a soldier. And in each one of those lives, we were told to go and conquer the land of Oz. And we went over. And the problem with these posers and these things, they had like an Achilles heel. They could not operate at night, or the airplanes they used with laser guns could not operate at night. And so the warriors from the land of Oz, which you could look at, what they probably looked like back in that time period. They didn't change too much. They would come by the thousands, and they would just wipe us out, just completely wipe us out. So I had two lives where I lost my life as a soldier trying to conquer the land of Oz. We never did. Okay.
my, as you bring this up, conquering other lands, I'm sure a lot of our viewers are wondering, what did the Atlanteans look like? You know, features, skin color. What did other people look like in other parts of the world? And
Right. And
yeah.
when the ETs did create humans, they were told to create different looking ones. So you have black humans, and you have Asian looking humans and white humans. This was all by creator's design because he wanted um, humans to learn how to uh, to work together and and be at peace. And what's going to happen and is happening now. Uh, I've been able to see it just in the last 50 years or whatever, that people are uh, marrying different races, and slowly but surely, eventually, by the 3000s or so, there's only going to be one Earth human, which is going to be chocolate, sort of chocolate brown in color. And it's just going to be one Earth human. And you could see this happening by all these different races intermingling and marrying and having different looking children.
Yeah, that's one way to solve the problem,
Yeah.
right? People intermarry
Yeah.
and you
And of
can't,
course, there are people that are trying to stop that. Let's get rid of the immigrants and all. But it'll only slow down for a little while. It is not going to really stop it. It's going to happen. So the quicker you get used um, to seeing mixed race children and everything, the better we will uh, we will be as a society.
absolutely.
So, so you know, these things, um, as I say, uh, the first major catastrophe was 30,000 years ago, and and that's when the Atlantean uh, continent broke apart when all these volcanoes blew up at the same time. Um, Up until that time, they made great strides. Um, but when this natural calamity happened 30,000 years ago, it left only islands here and there. So you've got the Canary Islands, or um, you've got the Bahamas, because the tail of the Atlantean continent went down as far as the Bahamas. That's why you can find that Bahamian road, or whatever it's called. um, that
Yeah.
that
The Bimini Road, right?
Yeah, the Bimini Road.
And I
But
think Edgar Casey talked about that. And then I think when I was much younger, they actually discovered it underwater.
yeah,
Can I ask
and
you something? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I keep thinking it every time you mention these volcanoes underwater. It's one of the things I've been having premonitions about
mhm.
underwater volcanoes and seeing sloshing in my psychic visions, like a different type of flooding and the ocean acting different than a normal tsunami. So I just was curious. We are going to talk a little bit of this in part three and continuing other videos, but do you see like a lot of that happening in our lifetime again? This type of,
Yeah, but you know, uh, just tying this in with 2026. I mean, the last major um, uh, natural disaster was the Atlantean continent sinking and killing millions of people around the world. There
yeah,
were the oceans rose from the land sinking 165 feet or so.
yeah,
And that's all the oceans all around the world. So
yeah,
every single city and town and village all around the world, sitting on the coast of the world, were completely submerged in 160 something feet of water. So that wiped out all of our history up to that time 30,000 years ago. So nobody really had a history of what was happening before then, other than the Egyptians having, parchments that they were able to save and are saved, but there's the little problem of the fact that it goes back so far. I mean, just as one example, my wife's next life will be back 12,500 years ago in Egypt, and as one of the early pharaohs. But they can't mention that because supposedly according to Muslim doctrine, the earth was only created 6,000 years ago. So they have
Yeah.
all these parchments that mention those times, but they're not allowed to publicize them. So
I'm
go
yeah.
ahead.
I'm very familiar with Egypt, being a belly dancer and being there. I almost lived in Egypt. I was hired for different jobs but didn't move. But I'm very familiar with going to the antiquities and museums, and then they have new discoveries, and they can't, we have science and we have discoveries and we have, sonar looking underground, but nothing can go back more than 6,000 years for the creation,
Yeah, exactly.
even with
So
carbon dating, everything.
yeah, and there really are. I'm told that when Plato wrote about Atlantis, excuse me, um, uh, he his grandfather had actually traveled to Egypt and bought some some pop. How do you say it? Papyrus?
Papyrus, yeah,
Papyrus.
papyrus.
Sorry,
Made
and
from the reeds, yeah.
brought it back to Greece, and they actually still exist in somebody's basement. So that's how Plato first learned about Atlantis was from his grandfather who went there.
I remember someone named Solon. This grandfather met someone named Solon, right?
I
Something like
didn't
that.
get that. I haven't.
I no, I've heard some other channelers talk about that. So it's just,
Okay.
yeah.
So anyway, quite a history. So when the continent broke up after achieving a very high degree of uh, uh, of advancement, they had to, of course, recover, and it took quite a long time. It the main the main things that were left of Atlantis were some islands that were not quite in the middle of the Atlantic, more towards North America, but still pretty far out. And and so the islands were Poseidia or Poseidon, I'm
Oh,
not,
yeah, yeah.
and and Aaron. Now, Aaron, if you were to draw a line out from Washington, D.C., which I think is interesting, as you'll understand in a minute, you'll hit Aaron, and then there were five little islands, sort of like in a crescent shape below Aaron. Aaron was a little larger than Hispaniola today, and then he had the five islands. Poseidon was the size of Cuba, but it was in a round shape. Okay, so if you look at Cuba, it, Cuba's fairly large island, and so was Poseidon. So so there, that's where they landed. Now, one of those interesting things about history, um, uh, in the Mediterranean, there was a man by the name of Hercules, and
Mhm.
Hercules was the first uh, navigator of the Atlantic after all this mud that was sitting on the surface of the Atlantic Ocean slowly sank to the ocean floor. And so he was able to navigate past the Gibraltar. And so over a long period of thousands of years, naturally, it's like today where you have people like James Bond or uh, Mission Impossible or whatever, these uh, superheroes or Superman or whatever that the storytellers would use Hercules in their
Yeah,
science fiction stories. So that's how Hercules got. But he was just a normal man, but the writers loved to use his name in their stories.
absolutely. Yes.
Okay. So here we have, these islands. And so they needed posers. And so they knew that there was a crystal field that is to the west of Hot Springs, what we know as Hot Springs, Arkansas now. And so they had miners, about 600 or so, including their families, I believe.
Mhm.
And so they went to what is now Arkansas, and they would set up a temporary mining camp, but with, you know, it sounded like not tents, but more uh, sturdy wood dwellings. And
Mhm.
they would mine, finding these, they had ways to find these huge um, crystals, and they would mine out an area, and then they would, tear down the town, and they would move to another area. And so they would find these crystals, and they would ship them back to the coast of North America and to these two sets of islands. Uh, Aaron was like 350 miles or so south of Poseidia. So they were fairly close. So things rocked on. Now this, keep in mind, this was 30,000 years ago, but as things got closer to about 12,500 years ago, um, they started warring. And the Poseidon people were the law of one, and the people uh, at Aaron were the sons of Belial. Okay, so
Now, some people are familiar with the law of one through the books Ra, the Ra
mhm,
writings. So just a side
yeah,
note for people if you're interested in that.
right. So here we have this the law of one people, and they started really it really got worse and worse. Um, they were bombing each other different ways, and so finally, um, the uh, law the uh, sons of Belial people um, decided that enough was enough, and they were going to wipe out the people in Poseidon. And so one day they did what was kind of termed a Pearl Harbor attack, where they had about 325 or 50 aircraft that uh, used this crystal power, and they flew up to Poseidon, and using these laser guns proceeded to wipe out Poseidon. And these laser guns would literally melt the ground you were on along with you. And so they killed over 1 million people the very first day of the war. They thought they knew where all the aircraft fields were for Poseidon, but they didn't. And so the Poseidon people retaliated, and they came back against the Aryan people. And before it was over, both islands, all the islands, the what is it, five, six, seven islands, all sank. And at that time, now keep in mind, we had okay, we had 30,000 years ago, the oceans rose 165 feet or so. Okay.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Then 12,500 years ago, as these islands were being sunk in the warfare, the oceans rose 45 feet. Okay. So
Or
not nearly as much as before, but it was enough to cover most of the Mediterranean. And this was actually the time where Noah built his ark. It was
oh,
not
that's true. Yes.
it was not the time, 3 or 4 thousand. Keep in mind, they
Yeah.
couldn't keep records worth a darn back then. And
Mhm.
so, in the Bible, I think it was 3 or 4 thousand years ago. I'm sorry, I can't remember, but it was actually 12,500 years ago. And and Noah built his ark. He was told by Creator to build it, and he built it. Uh, and and he and his family floated off. Now they, you have to understand the story changed over centuries because supposedly the whole world was was underwater. It
Yeah.
wasn't. It was only 45 feet. And so
Mm.
naturally, as time went on, people said, well, he had to have included all the wild animals uh, because the whole world was covered with water. So they changed the story, but it was actually only domesticated animals that went in the ark. So they floated around, and eventually, as the seas receded, they landed on the bottom part of Mount Ararat, as compared to believing they landed on the top of it. And another way you can kind of tell, one of his sons, if you read, one of his sons married a girl. Well, where did that girl come from? Well, she was from a family from um, from a place where it was not touched by the 45-foot raise in the water. So,
Yeah.
so
You know,
that's a little clue to figure out how that actually happened. So that's the story of Noah. Noah actually happened. It
and
just didn't.
yeah, but you know what? We have this whole 6,000 year issue with the religion, Judeo-Christian religion, including Muslim, because they all come from the same lineage.
Mhm.
But other parts of the world, and I know in China, they talk about these great floods being over 10,000, 12,000 years ago,
Yeah,
who don't have that conflict with their religion. It's in their records. So it's
yeah.
really interesting. And a lot of people have speculated that was the flood with Noah. Yeah.
And the Indians, okay, keep in mind, the Indian continent itself didn't didn't flood, but between the 165 feet and 45 feet, there's a large landmass that was flooded to the southeast that was connected to India that the Tamils know about. Okay, and and
Mm.
it did flood because they became really the oldest. You know, the Hindu religion is the oldest religion in the world because uh, they weren't as touched as the other parts of the world. So that's where the Indians and it was about well, they had their own war. Um,
Yes.
it was about 31,000 years ago or so. It was called the Mob, and I'm going to destroy this word, Mahabharata
Yeah.
War. I'm sorry.
Mahabharata. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with and they had
Okay.
advanced technology. It's in their scripture, their flying
Exactly.
machines,
Yeah.
the other beings. I mean, this is in their religion. It's recorded.
Yeah. Now, what they've lost is the fact that Krishna uh, actually incarnated 77 times in a row as Krishna. And because part of my sole interest are religions of the world, I would have lives every 5 or 10 of his lives to look in on him, check on him. And finally, during the Mahabharata war, he and I actually had to use a nuke on this despot that was trying to conquer the world. So uh, there was a nuclear device used at that time to conquer this despot of a ruler.
Yes, and anybody who's watched some of the Ancient Aliens series and things from the History Channel, you will see that they have discovered that the sand, like only things can happen through a nuclear war. They had to have nuclear abilities for some of the remnants that happened tens of thousands of years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's that sort of brings us up to the point where obviously there were people. Well, I forgot to tell the story on myself. Um, about 200 years before that final, uh, destroying the islands.
Yeah.
Uh, excuse me. I was uh, I created the gentle way. Okay. And I just happened to be asking him about this one day. Hey, why do I have an interest? And I was told that I actually created the gentle way about 200 years before the end of those islands. And and so I was told not only by my guardian angel, but also even ETs that I was working with at that time, that they were going to destroy themselves. And so I had 1 million people that were practicing the gentle way back then, that were my followers. And I and about 25,000 of my followers actually migrated from Poseidon, because that's where most of them were, through Europe, what is now Europe, all the way to Egypt. And
Yes.
and so and this was done in kind of waves, but when we arrived in Egypt, they were concerned that, oh, here the Atlanteans are here again. They're going to conquer us again. And um, I had to explain to them, no, we were gentle people, and all we wanted to do was, excuse me, was to live simple lives. And there was an Egyptian princess at that time, and in her meditations, she was told that we to trust what I said, and they allowed us to settle in Egypt, where it was it was much greener than today,
Mm,
and so that Egyptian princess is my wife today.
wonderful. So, Tom, I'm sure everybody is wondering, are these pyramids and these ancient temples that we can still see in Egypt, are they remnants of the Atlanteans, Poseidonians that moved over there?
I've told I had a life where I would made sure how they were placed, okay, but I don't believe it was that life. It was a future life, um, you know, several thousand years later. But I've always had, kind of, uh, I've always wanted to ask more questions, and I'm always open for more questions for people to send, because as I like to mention, on my website,
Yeah.
thegeneralwaybook.com, you can sign up for my free weekly newsletter. And I've done 900 of these so far. Excuse me. And I post them, and they're all archived on my website, so you can see and you can read them and see if I made, if I didn't receive something. I typically tell people I think I'm in the 80 to 90% uh, uh,
Yeah,
area on accuracy, but I
which
was
is
told
nice.
nobody that does this work is is completely 100%. So that you just have to accept that, knowing. And for people in the future, it'll get easier and easier, and probably more accurate than I am today. So you can sign up for that, and you can look at all these newsletters, and there's a Google search button, so you can pull up Atlantis or Lemuria or whatever you're looking for.
So, Tom, we're nearing the end of Atlantis because I know we have to get on to Lemuria, but I'm sure that people want to know this third iteration. Um, what time period, how many thousands of years ago was that before
Well,
they
that was
moved
about,
over to Egypt?
yeah, that was about 12,700 years ago
Okay,
in that general area.
okay.
So that's where we moved. And then there were other people, in Atlantis that migrated to Central and South America. That's
Oh yeah,
and they
that's
joined the Indians there.
if
Um, uh,
similar structures with the pyramids.
yeah, and and I'm sure some also went to North America. So there were people that bailed out that could see the end coming and move before the final destruction of those
Yeah,
islands.
so you knew beforehand and you have found safety. Yeah,
Mhm.
because you were tuned in and your followers followed you.
Yep. And there were some more that came afterwards, but there were people that just couldn't leave for their families or
Yeah.
whatever it happened to be. Just the typical things that happen these days, especially when, in 2026, we're going to have all these major earth changes on the North American West Coast. There are people, already emailing me saying, Tom, you know,
No,
I've I've got family. What can I do? How can I convince them that, something major is coming along?
I know it's so hard. I mean, like even I have all these visions for years and a lot of them have come true. And it is, and I know this is coming. I've known for quite some time. But now I've often thought of moving to Asheville, North Carolina for a long time, for over 10 years, because I knew I should get on higher ground because
Hmm.
I know everything I saw. And then a little over a year ago, Asheville was decimated. It's up in the mountains and it's flooded out. Like half of, it was horrible. The whole art district was destroyed, the river
Yes.
community. And they're still cleaning up. It's over a year and a half now, I think. I was down there in May. I was in shock. Like, okay, you just have to follow your guides.
Yeah.
You can't just say, I'm going to move, pack up and move
Right. And you
everything.
say, I request the most benevolent come
Never-
for the perfect place for me to live. And you'll be good.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
that'll happen.
And we're all
Oh,
eternal. We have many lifetimes.
yeah. So I think that probably gets us towards the end of this segment.
Okay. So, thank you, everybody. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed this. Then we know to do more. Like if you want more ancient civilizations, if you want more shows with Tom, how I know to do that, how we know that it matters is if you
We
hit.
don't want to ever hear from him
Yeah,
again.
we don't hear from you, nothing happens. We're like, ah, but
No.
help us know we're giving up of our free time and and our healing time, as you know, we're both going through some stuff. And so we need your support by just recognizing and you can subscribe for free. You can subscribe to my channel for free. Tom doesn't have a channel, but he has a newsletter. You can subscribe for free. You can ask questions. Please share this video. And if you want to support my channel and help me continue doing more of this, you can book me for a psychic reading, and that helps inadvertently support this channel. And you can also get Tom's book. It's a wonderful read, and we're going to talk next about Atlantis. So I hope you join us.
Lemuria.
Oh, Lemuria, I'm so sorry, my brain. I'm still I'm still like getting my oxygen back after surgery. I mean, like, I went a little loopy with lack of oxygen. I'm still dealing with some of that. So apologize for that. Do my best. Um, so thank you so, so much, Tom. And we're going to take a short break and join us in part two. All right, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Okay.